Hey guys, how's it going? I have a Wood Turners Club meeting tonight, and I always like to bring something that I turn the day of the meeting. So I'm a little bit on a time crunch because I didn't do turning today. I did more axe stuff. Anyway, so I have this little piece of elm that I just cut up, and I'm going to turn this, and we'll try to make a nice simple bowl out of it as quickly as we possibly can. So let's get this on the lathe and let's get started. Onto a screw chuck. We'll have our little rest here. That will go onto there. Turn that on. It's so cold outside at the moment that everything is frozen in place. So it's pretty chilly out, and I haven't put the heating on because, as I said, I didn't do turning today. So I'm just freezing my butts off. So yeah. So let's get this started. 5/8 bowl gouge. I'm gonna make a foot that's flat, so I'm gonna take the tenon off, but first I want to just scrape this up. To do it with the bowl gouge. Vibration that you're hearing is simply because this is not perfectly lined up against this face of the screw chuck. It's not because it's not solidly placed there and it's not solidly held. It's simply just because it's not held perfect. Actually, I'm going to try and make a different type of shape. I just had a slight idea. bowl, but now I've since decided to make my life harder. So, anyways, so now we're just going to sand this up quick. You really need to sand this up to get a nice, perfect finish, because if it's not perfect, then it's crap. I always like to check if there's tear out spots. Always check tear out spots beforehand. And this drill is about to die. That's another thing, living in the cold. Batteries just don't last. They just don't. You constantly have to change them. Alright, so that's pretty good. Go for 120. So that is perfect. Now something that I like to do is I'm going to take the bottom off of this. This is going to be a perfectly round bottom bowl. So what I do is that I'm going to, which is something that I discovered over the past couple of weeks, is I'm going to wax it from here to there, and the rest I'm just going to leave blank so that I can do one pass at the end. too afraid to go heavy on the wax, it gives a perfectly clear finish. Now, one thing you don't want to forget, and this is an absolute do not want to forget this, is to mark your center. If you don't mark your center, it's going to be a pain in the butt for you to recenter this on the lathe. Now, the only problem is now this is going to be a pain in the butt to get off. Because when they're nice and waxed, they're really hard. And again, just another proof that screw chucks are the absolute bomb. So you can see that beautiful glossy finish if you really put the wax on. So I've finished that curve pretty decent, so I'll be able to take that off. But first we have to actually do the inside. And as I always say, it doesn't matter how nice the outside is, if you screw up the inside, the whole thing is worthless. I really hope I can coin that phrase at some point. Because it's a lot of people say the outside of the bowl is the bowl. I 100% disagree with that. The inside of the bowl is the bowl. Because if you don't have an inside, you don't have a bowl, you just have something that's not hollowed out yet. So, the inside of the bowl is the bowl. So it doesn't matter how good your outside is, if your inside is crap, it doesn't matter. So that's that. Now I have a quite steep enclosed curve. I'm going to have to manage that carefully. This is quite an enclosed shape. Oh, have a pretty decent sized split there. But, oh, that sucks. That's really, I really thought I got all the splits out when I did the, when I cut the blank up. All right, I'll just squeeze some CA glue in there. I really want this to hold. This might sound bad of me, but I always like to push myself before the Woodturners Club meeting to show off. I know it sounds bad, and I know being a show off is not the best, but sometimes in life You need to show off a little bit. Like, come on. Like, sometimes it's okay. And I like to do it before. Because, and also I find it's kind of fun to say, well, this is what I was able to do 7 years ago. Or this is what I was able to do 6 months ago. This is what I'm able to do currently at the moment now. I'm just going to clear this rim up first because it's really bugging me. Is that fixed? Still that. How are we going to fix that? That's pretty good. Anyway, so what I was going to say before I was rudely interrupted by this split is that for enclosed shapes, I really enjoy a 45-degree angle. The reason is that you can get quite deep inside without having the gouge go so far. Well, as if you use this gouge, which is a 55-degree angle, which I enjoy for deep bowls, like big bowls, you have to be kind of out here. And you really have to swing past the lathe to go check out what's going on. With a 45, or even like if I was going to use a spindle gouge are 35, you're like right here. You're like right there, and you can easily swing. So I like to do my enclosed shapes with the 45, and then transition with a 55 for the end of the bowl. That's what I really like. But now I just want to make sure this is thin enough, which I still think I can go a little bit thinner. And then I'm going to transition to the 55 for the bottom. Now, how does that feel? That feels not too bad. Let me take down the center mass. 55. And the advantages of the 55 degrees is that if I was trying to get the bottom of this bowl out with this, I'd have to be swung all the way here. I'd be like this. But with this bowl, with this gouge, I have a lot of clearance. Even because of this highly enclosed shape, it's not very enclosed, but it's enclosed, I'm going to probably go with the bottom feeder at the end, so that I'm like this, and I have all this clearance there. But for now, I'm still going to stick to the 55. So I'm still quite thick, but I'm going to take down that center mass completely. So that was the bottom feeder gouge. Now, I have a lot of material to remove, but I wanted to make sure that I got that enclosed shape first. So now I think I'm going to do the rest with the bottom feeder gouge. I don't want to remove too much because this is going to be a perfectly round bottom bowl. So I need to leave myself material to take the tenon off without being stressed of having that bowl be too thin. Because when you have a tenon, you can afford, because if your tenon is like this, basically that's your tenon, your bowl is here, right? You can afford to go dig into the tenon a little bit without it being problematic. But if the tenon is to become your foot. And if you dig in just a little bit too much, and you come and take the foot off, well, then you're screwed. Which is kind of the reason why I don't use mortises with bowls, because of the problem is a mortise is the opposite. So your bowl has to finish so that's the bottom of your bowl here. Your bowl has to finish up here so you not to punch through it, which is why I don't tend to use mortises that much. I use them with plates, but plates are different because you can allow them to be a little bit thicker because they're going to be used and you're going to put stuff on them. So if they're a little bit thicker, it doesn't really matter. But with bowls, you want to go for lightness, because a 12-inch bowl can be quite heavy once it's filled with stuff. But anyway, so I'm going to do the rest with the bottom feeder. Now you see I have to start way out here. That for that reason, the bottom feeder is quite a fun and interesting tool that I think gets not a bad rap, but anyway. So now I think that's pretty much perfect. Now I'm gonna go with a scraper and just scrape that bottom part, make everything smooth, but then I'm gonna sand, flip it around. That's good. And if there's a little bit of weight in the bottom, it doesn't really bother me that much, because it's going to be perfectly round. It's going to just sit in your hand and it's going to be really comfortable. But now we can sand that. Start from 80 grit all the way down to 400. Stop and we feel some end grain there. Which is not the best. End grain there. Oop, pad came off. Yeah, I hate when they do that. When the pads start to come off like that. A little bit more end grain. You really want to get those fibers dealt with as soon as you can, because if you let them just stick up like that, they're never going to go away. And that's the honest truth, man. You really need to check and feel. I like to practice that, feeling with your fingers. I know it sounds corny, but it's true. The more you learn to feel things out, compared to just like trusting the process. Well, not trusting the process, but like actually, like I know that that's a little bit thick in the bottom. I know that's what I want. But if you always measure, you kind of lose sight of that. Alright, so that's pretty good. We'll go with the 120 now. And again, if you're comfortable, that's just how I do it, honestly. Like, everyone, to each their own. I do it like this. If you don't like doing it like that, don't do it like that. Like, really. But I find that if you feel your way through all the time, you'll just become better at it than if you always rely on a tape measure or a depth gouge thingy. Why I say the inside of the bowl is the bowl, because if you put your finger on the outside and it feels nice, and you put your finger on the inside and it feels bumpy and ragged, then that deters from potential buyers. So you really need to check the inside, in my opinion, more than you want to check the outside. But again, that's just me personally. I don't know what other people do. I don't know what other people enjoy or like. That's what I do, and that's how I see things. And again, I'm not a professional at this. I'm not an expert. I'm just a dude who does this as a hobby. Now there's a little split in there, and that's what's causing all the problems. So we're gonna just seal that up with some CA. That'll get hard, and it's gonna be a lot easier to deal with. There we go. That is very decent. So we'll move up to 240. I always like to take new sanding papers. I don't find it's wasteful. I just find that you get a very much better finish doing multiple new sanding papers than always doing the same one. Is because these little drill chucks, they spin a lot. It's the same principle as your bowl gouge sharpness. Like if you take a bowl gouge cuts wood, like how many revolutions per minute? It's crazy. So it gets dull a lot quicker than like if you were to do it with a knife. Well, as this, it's the same thing. So they get used very, very fast. I'd say a set of these per bowl. So like one bowl is one set of sanding discs. Like maybe every 2 bowls for small bowls. For like 12-inch bowls, it's 1. You'll probably use 1 set for the outside, then another set for the inside. And you can say, Matthew, that's very excessive. That's very, very excessive. Well, look. I've always tried to reduce the amount of stuff I use to be able to like last it as long as I can. And this is the way I found to get the best finish for the bowls. So that's it. I know it's not the best and it's not the most economical, but if you want really nice finishes on your bowls, this is what works for me. Go, and you can see that shine, that beautiful, beautiful shine. So yeah, now it's time to do the round bottom part. All right, so round bottom part time. So putting that in, and that's why we mark center. I use my cloth thing to make sure that everything is nice and snug. There we go. Now that's horrible. So we want to angle it so that we get a good and nice fit. Alright, so I think it's the cloth. So that hole is from turning. Probably at some point it was hanging out and I cut it, and that's what did that. I think that's going to be the best option. Still a little bit off. Really want to get this center right. Because if you don't, your round bottom is not going to be good. The best I'm gonna get. Alright, and as we remember, lower the speed. I do it with a spindle gouge. And tighten that a little bit. like to do it. I like to go from here, then there, then there, then there, and just gradually bring it down instead of just going. Because as you gradually do it like that, you can see the shape form and you could really get a nice shape onto it. And then at the end, you just want to just dig in to make a little point so it's really easy to pop off. So I have a little bit of torn out grain there, and that's why it's going because I'm hitting that torn out grain. Go to a sharper gouge. A little bit faster. Alright, now I'm going to sand, so I'm going to get this out of the way. That's my little nub. So I have a torn out grain here and here. This is why I wax the outside first, because this is not perfect, so it's going to be hard to wax. I'm just going to wax this part. So I'm going to get my sanding discs, and we're just going to focus on hammering down this. Also, a reason why I didn't sand all the way is because just the simple fact of having the wax is going to bog down the sandpaper. The less aggressive sandpaper will also make the curve more smooth. That's good. Now, this is a little bit of a hard part because you can't press too hard or you're going to stop the bowl. So you can kind of just add some pressure in the tailstock, but you can't put as much pressure as you can on the out when you're doing just the outside or the inside. And you just try to blend both coats together. And there we go. And if you put your hand, you can't really feel that there's a difference. And then look-wise, you can see there's a little divot, but not much. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and kill that down to as minimum as I can. Where's my... Oh, there it is. That was unexpected, but well, look, that does the trick. And then I come in with the skew, and I just, because as we know, the skew chisel is basically a giant chisel, and what you really want to do is go in the right direction. So the grain's running this way, right? Doesn't look like it, but that's how it runs. So you want to go like that. Now, obviously, the best way of doing this is with coal jaws. So those giant jaws, like face plates that grip the inside of the bowl. I don't have them. I have them, but I don't have them on a chuck currently, and I'm too lazy to put them on a chuck. And another thing is that coal jaws, yes, they hold, but they're not meant for structural changes. Like giant structural changes are not the best. I'm just going to sand this quick. There we go. There's a little bit of tear out there. That, and now just blend everything up and take what is left, which isn't a lot, of my wax solution, and just blend that in, and there we go. So what was I saying? Yeah, so coal jaws, yes, they're fun. I have them here. So these are coal jaws. You could fit that over and expand, but these aren't perfect, and they're not steel jaws that are holding, so you can't do like really aggressive movements or aggressive stuff with these. I'd rather just a standard kind of jam chuck. But if I had another chuck, so now I'm at like 6. If I had another chuck and I could fit these on, I would. Because it's fun to just like, and then you can just smooth out and sand that perfectly. But at the moment, I don't have them. So you can get away with a jam chuck. I'd go jam chuck before buying these. I didn't buy them, they came with the lathe, so that's why. And the chuck they were on was my 5-inch chuck that I use these to do all my big bowls. So I'd rather have my 5-inch jaws than I would having the smaller jaws, and that's kind of why they're on they're kind of on the sidelines for now. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I didn't do it as fast as I would have wanted because I did explain a lot more stuff than I thought I would, but I hope despite that you guys enjoyed. I think it's a nice little project, and yeah, so as always, like, comment, subscribe, whatever. Happy turning, and we'll see you next time.